Eric Burgess here with Music Marketing TV. Today we are going to be stepping a little bit further than what we covered in the last video. So in the last video we talked about the modulation mapper, and we are going to be looking in this video at all these different cases of using it. So I went through the stock presets of Zebra 2 and picked out cases that use the modulation mapper in some interesting ways. Some of them are quite, I think, hilarious. Like there's a unusual pitch bend here that I'm just like, okay. And up here, we have sort of more of a common use. You'll find stuff like this in like almost every synth. So here it's being used to generate random output to modulate something and add variation to the patch. So we're going to be looking at these. So these were all made by Howard Scar because he made the majority of the stuff that ships with Zebra 2. And let's just jump right in. You should be familiar with this from the last video. Like we covered it pretty extensively. So we're in increment mode. So as notes play, it's going to chug along here. And we're in arpeggiation mode. So as I hold down a note, it's going to still trigger notes, which will move it along still. And it's controlling the flavor knob and the comb filter. So if I play this, let's play a higher note. So you see when it gets higher, we get a much more like open sound, and lower is darker. It just tends to work out that way. And if I move this mapping up, we'll hear this get accentuated here. Get a lot more resonancy with these higher ones. Now without this, so we dialed it back to something tasteful. And without this, every note's exactly the same. So this is just a move to add variation to a patch, add a little bit of life in order to, make it just a more interesting sound, a more dynamic sound. So that's a really great way to use the modulation mapper. There's not anything like too crazy going on here, just standard stuff. If we go over to the next patch, this one rescales the mod wheel. So playing the sound, let me play a little bit lower of a note. This one is sort of like a quality of life kind of thing. It just adjusts how you interact with the patch. So the mod wheel has been changed. So if I move my mod wheel, we can see the gray line moving. Small moves do almost nothing for the sound. Just it's been remapped so that that's the case. And only when you get to the higher range of the mod wheel, small changes can have a much larger impact. And this just changes how you play the patch, makes it feel a little bit more natural. Also makes things like fading a bit easier. So there is that example. This one's pretty straightforward. Nothing too crazy there. This next one I find very intriguing. So what's been set up here is something you could set up with an LFO. This is just another way to sort of accomplish it. And there's an LFO driving this, which is why it's moving without me doing anything. And it's moving through, but this LFO has been quantized to these levels. So these levels get sent out, and they're being sent to the tune. So this creates an arpeggiation because, we're going to start high and go low. And it's also being sent to the sync, which whenever you see something sent to the sync, it's going to get gritty pretty fast. So let me go ahead and play some notes for you. Let's keep it lower. So you can hear it doing its thing. Now, it's on Map Smooth, and Map Smooth will interpolate between values, where with a sound like this, especially linked to the sync knob, I kind of prefer things to be a little bit more crispy, and you might be able to get some more out of it if we change it to Map Quantize, because Quantize has no smoothing. It'll just jump to the given values. I was a little bit surprised at actually how much this changed to the sound. Versus. Another thing that you probably are going to want to do is if you don't want this particular arpeggiation, maybe it just doesn't work with the track you're working on, but you like the variation and texture as it moves, we could always just remove the mod map off the tune wheel. And we can get that nice, growing, energetic, pulsing wave. And so that's something kind of worth noting. That stuff should be pretty straightforward, I'm hoping. But knowing that the modulation map is what's causing this can be something that if you've never used Zebra 2, you could be like, what? Why would that have anything to do with this? But it is touching the tune knob, so that would be a dead giveaway. But anyways, there's that pretty interesting use of an LFO into a mod map. This one always makes me kind of chuckle. It is a remapping of the pitch bend wheel. So if I pitch bend up, you may not be able to see that green line moving, but it is. And it will still pitch bend up because it's not like taking away the pitch bend. Like that still works as expected. But when we go down, things get crazy. You can see that the line move through there. And so there's an option here. It's just changed how you work with the patch. That's it. Just a creative decision. And it's one that I'm just like, I can appreciate this. This is an interesting thing. We're touching the patch. If you happen to reach for the pitch bend wheel, you're going to be a bit surprised at up versus down. So kind of a cool concept there. So there's another example of remapping a existing parameter with the modulation map. The last one here is one that controls another arpeggiation on the tune. But it's going backwards. That's because it's linked up to envelope 2. We talked about this last time. So envelope 2 has very fast attack, so it immediately hits the decay. If we bring the attack up, it'll actually scroll forwards. Well, envelope 2 is what's driving this, and that's driving the mod map. And this is a patch where I show you this patch because this is something that you very likely will actually want to turn off. So if you turn this off, that's like an amazing sound. But it's sort of hidden underneath this modulation map. Which is it's just to show off a patch in motion. That's what it is. So this is one that you might actually want to turn off. But again, we have it on quantized, so it's just jumping values. If we change it to smoothing, we get a little bit kind of a thing because it's being smoothed. But just so you're aware, so when you see these sorts of things, you might go, oh, this patch, you get a totally different vibe when you turn it off than when you have this on. So keep an eye out for the modulation map. There's some uses, though, of it in action. It's one of those things that oftentimes it's remapping parameters. I use it a lot, and this is just true in general for a lot of synthesizers I work with. I will use it for this sort of stuff, generally changing things one bit at a time. There's a couple other fancier cases if you dig through some of the presets where things are actually moving dynamically in here, and it's got a very similar idea. They're just there to change the sound so that every note's a bit different than another note. If you have any questions about what's been shown here, let me know. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.